Good morning or good evening or good afternoon, everybody. So what I will be covering here is the design and strategy part of an ecosystem. So roughly, this is the agenda, and those are the 3 points I would like to cover. An introduction, which is more about what is an ecosystem, what is not an ecosystem. And then we developed a tool at the ECSI, which is the ecosystem canvas, trying to summarize in a single page all the key questions and key components that in the designing of an ecosystem you need to cover. And I have a couple of cases I would like to share with you of application of this ecosystem canvas and in practice the process for designing an ecosystem, particularly for an incumbent company, so an existing large company. So what is an ecosystem? This is a little bit of a description. So it's an intro. I'm using the description of Professor Michael Jacobidis at London Business School. Obviously, there is quite a difference between a product and an ecosystem. Ecosystem is a set of products and services which are offered into a basket as alternatives for the end user or for the customer. The typical example you can see in publications and in cases of a business school is obviously the Apple cases with the App Store, where you do have a product which is the iPhone, and sitting on top of the product you have the App Store, which is fundamentally a basket of services, softwares, and apps that you can choose based on your needs and based on your context as a user in a very independent way. So what is it? What is not? Because going through some of those projects with particularly large companies and large companies which are ingrained mentally and in the genetic code about doing strategy as a product strategy. So when they think about ecosystem, they say, yeah, I get it. So ecosystem is fundamentally developing a bundle of products and services. But no, and the answer is no. It's not as simple as pulling together as a company an integrated bundle. Because a bundle is, at the end, is a company's choice. So I create a bundle of integrated products and services, and this is a quite fixed, or a number of bundles which are quite fixed based on the company's direct choice, which is very, very different from building an ecosystem which is creating the possibility for the user and for the customer of going through multiple options and combinations of complementary services and products from which the customer can choose freely. So that's the biggest difference. No, bundle is something that the company is designed and is kind of fixed, or there are some rigidity in changing it. And in an ecosystem, the customer, the user, is fundamentally assembling its own bundle from a variety of potential options. So if why is it so relevant, particularly for companies where digital is becoming a critical success factors, and there are obviously many of those industries where digital is changing the rules of a competition. But so why is it strategically so relevant to understand ecosystems and to understand ecosystem strategy? I think the first is because it can make competition relevant. So if you are in a business where this one is a product business and there is a commoditization, and fundamentally in a product business, you compete adding feature. So I offer more of this, and then your competitor is matching you, and then I am offering more performance on those other attributes, and then your competitor is matching you again. So you are into a commoditization trap. Ecosystem can help you to escape the commoditization trap, and big products is beating products systematically because they create more value for the customers, because the customers has more choices and more freedom in assembling those choices. The second reason is frequent customer interactions, because most of the times, even if not all the times, but most of the times, an ecosystem is coming with a digital platform. And thanks to the fact that it's coming with a digital platform, there is a possibility to multiply the number of touch points. So the frequency you interact with the customer is much higher for two reasons. The first one is the digital platform. The second one is because you don't interact on a single product or single service, which is the one offered by the incumbent company, but no, potentially if you are the orchestrator of the ecosystem on multiple products and services. So as there are two drivers which are increasing the frequency of a customer interactions. And why is good to increase the frequency of a customer interactions? Because you have more information, because you can create more loyalty, because you can understand better your customer, you can offer even a better service or better products. The third reason is usually when you get into an ecosystem, there is a stickiness effect. So if you are joining Apple App Store because you have an iPhone, there is a cost, there is a friction in moving to Google Android. There is a friction in downloading the same apps. There is a friction in the operating system, which is the digital platform behind it. So usually there is a stickiness by design. If you're entering into an ecosystem, you want to leave it. Actually, it's possible to leave it, but no, there is some kind of barriers and frictions that makes that change painful. And so that stickiness is obviously good for business all the time. So let me present one simple tool. So how do we design an ecosystem? A simple tool, we try to summarize in one page. You are probably familiar with the business model canvas. We try to make a very simple exercise and with a similar goal. In one page, you want to summarize and capture all the components. So let's start from the top. Any ecosystem has a holistic target customer and a core offering. If you are an incumbent, there is a core offering you are starting from, which is not the offering of the future ecosystem, but is the one where you are starting from. And obviously, you need to have a clarity on the digital platform supporting the core offering, but that platform needs to be expandable, or you need to have a plan to expand the platform in a way that can support the overall ecosystem. Then if you go down on the left, we have a shared functionality, which is the holistic job to be done for the ecosystem. So it's not the job to be done by a single product or a single service, but it's the job to be done by the holistic overall ecosystem. Complementors, so this is one of the misunderstandings, at least for us, complementors, you start with the goods and services that you would like to have in your basket because they are complementary to your core offering, and so you can create that ability to pick and choose for the users on multiple options. So we are not talking about names here of companies you are partnering, but we are talking about which are the categories of goods and services which are fitting very well with the shared functionality and supporting the shared functionality and building on your core offering. The firm's role, there is a lot of literature. It's very clear. You can be an orchestrator. I think there is a misunderstanding in the marketplace. You can be an orchestrator. Everybody wants to be an orchestrator, but there are also potential different roles. You can be a partner of an existing ecosystem, or you can be just a simple contributor. You don't need to be an orchestrator all the times. Ecosystem architecture is you have seen many of those graphs with a platform with 2 sides or 3 sides, and then how the flow of money or how the flow of information and services goes from one side to another. That is in one page the summary of an ecosystem architecture. Who are the sides of this ecosystem? Who is providing what for which eventually value? So this is something that you can start with one page, and obviously then you need to articulate for each single component the value proposition and the value creation. Then if you move on the right, you have the partners and partnering model. At this point, you can have names. Obviously, if you are in a consumer market, you don't need to put down names like in App Store, because there will be a pool and you just need to curate the fact that some of the app producers, they are not offering child abuse or that kind of stuff. But no, if you're in a B2B, there is a curation, and maybe it can be semi-closed type of an ecosystem. And so you have a criteria to select and eventually screen some of the partners. Also, in the partnering model, there are the agreements. Now, some of those agreements can be very standard. If you go on App Store and you create an app, there is a standard agreement. But no, if you are in B2B, it can be a standard agreement, or it can be a custom-made agreement for the different partners you are asking to join the ecosystem. And the last on the right, bottom right, is the customer relationship model, which is is including the network effect, is including the database and the data flow and the information data flow, is fundamentally all the touch points. How do you engineer those touch points, and how you extract the data that then can be relevant to improve your service, but also to create, in some cases, your network effect. Obviously, at the bottom, you need to have a value proposition in terms of value and monetization, and a fair split of the value between the different partners. No, particularly if you are the orchestrator, your job is to be fair in engineering that value sharing model and try to not be someone who is too greedy and try to appropriate all the value there. Let me show you one example. I will start with the video first, and then we try to summarize from the video the key components in one canvas like this. So this is the video. Let me start with the video, and then we go to the canvas for DBS. DBS is one of the most innovative banks in the world. It's based in Singapore.
I like to save it. She likes to save it. He likes to save it. We like to save it. What I wanna get, what I wanna buy. Gotta make an effort, gotta do it right. Don't ask daddy, don't ask mommy. Put my money on a stamp. I like to save it. She likes to save it. He likes to save it. We like to save it. Saving is money. It's fantastic. Saving is money. It's fantastic. Start with 1, 2, or 3 is fine. Pretty soon, boy, what I want is mine. Saving is money. It's fantastic. Saving is money. It's fantastic. Start with 1, 2, or 3 is fine. Pretty soon, boy, what I want is mine. Saving is money. It's fantastic. Saving is money. It's fantastic. Come on, everybody. Let's save with Smiley.
All right. So if
Alessandro, I think you didn't share your screen, or at least some of us couldn't see the video. We could hear the music, but not the...
oh, I'm sorry for that. So you didn't see the video? So all of you?
Yeah, we didn't see the video.
Maybe if you share your screen again.
Okay, so let me Let me do that again. You see the video now?
No, I think you're just sharing the presentation and not the screen. So that could be maybe the reason why we can't see the video.
Yeah, it seems not embedded in the. Is it on YouTube?
Where about now?
To save it. We like to save it.
Yes.
What I wanna get, what I wanna buy. Gotta make an effort, gotta do it right. Don't ask daddy, don't ask mommy. Put my money on a stamp. I like to save it, she likes to save it. He likes to save it, we like to save it. Saving is money, it's fantastic. Saving is money, it's fantastic. Start with 1, 2 or 3 is fine. Pretty soon, boy, what I want is mine. Saving is money, it's fantastic. Saving is money, it's fantastic. Start with 1, 2 or 3 is fine. Pretty soon, boy, what I want is mine. Saving is money, it's fantastic. Saving is money, it's fantastic. Come on, everybody, let's save with Smiley.
Right, so let me go back to the presentation here. So you saw the video, and this is the ecosystem of a smart body. And let me try to summarize what you saw in the video. This was a commercial of DBS in Singapore. So the target customer for this ecosystem are the parents of primary schools students in Singapore. The core offering, so DBS is obviously pulling together this ecosystem based on a core offering and monetization, which is based on placing saving accounts, joint saving accounts, parents and students, where the parents have the visibility of the students' spend, the students' habits in terms of what they decide to do, to enable also the monitoring of what they are doing. And the digital platform is the app, which is called Smart Buddy, that you have seen in the video. So if you go through the functionality, share functionality first, what is the share functionality? There is a pain point for the parents to understand how can I do the remote monitoring of students without being invasive of students, particularly in terms of consumption, how I am using the money, where I'm going, how is my health, where is my kids, it's all that kind of stuff. And particularly, there is an element of consumptions when you provide a saving account, which is, the student can use freely, and it's jointly on the names of the parent and the students. Complementers, obviously, they were pulling in a typical B2B, a smartwatch, and doing an agreement with the producer of smartwatch to track the spending. You have seen that they were paying also the bus tickets, and it was nice. It was designed for kids. It was colorful. So there was not, again, an open type of app store-like, but there was a curated ask for joining to a future partner. But no, they were looking for a smartwatch partner and complementer here. The schools, with particularly the canteen and the merchants for paying and buying a number of services for the kids. And now in the H2 2019, they've been involving also the government, particularly the public transportation, so the kids, they can pay it with, again, the smartwatch, the same smartwatch. DBS is an orchestrator, is a typical play of an orchestrator. The ecosystem here, you can see the architecture is an architecture of two sides. On one side, you have the customers. In this case, the customers are both parents and students. The students are the users. The primary customer are the parents, and then on the other side you have it's not two sides, it's probably at least three sides. You have the merchants, and then you have everything is related to the public government, so including schools and including transportation. Up to now, I think 32%, this is a data of 2019, probably is up now. 32% of government schools in Singapore, they sign up on this. If you go on the partnering model, if you think about how do you regulate this, for the merchant, it's very simple. You can create a standard agreement, and that is the standard agreement. It's like, you are with a Visa or you are with a MasterCard. There is a standard agreement. You take it, you sign. You don't discuss merchant by merchant. But when you go with the government and the schools, obviously, those are custom-made contractual agreements, and they go through months and sometimes several months of a discussion and negotiation. The customer relationship model, so every single touch point from the app and from the digital interaction also of the parent and the kid, they were mapped, they were automated, they were also understood which were the information flow behind it, and they were using those information flow then to improve even the services. In terms of a value sharing model for DBS, it's very simple. No, I want to get fees from the saving accounts, but also I want to increase the probability that when those kids will become students, they are naturally becoming future customers. And for schools, the value source is the students' information and data to fine-tune their education and health program, as we know, their habits. For the merchants, it's obviously a value source because, if I am part of the ecosystem, I'm increasing the possibility of having kids with a significant spend, and then I can increase the number of transactions on the goods and services typical of kids. So this is, as you can see in one page, you have all the elements of an ecosystem canvas. The real question is how do we, so this is a summary. So like all the canvases, those are summaries. How do you get there? How do you arrive to that strategy or that ecosystem canvas? And I want to focus here on a few steps. How do you do that? I don't think there is enough time to go through all the elements of the canvas here. So how do you create a shared functionality? How do you identify the ecosystem architecture? But I want to go through a couple of steps, which are, at least in my experience, in the experience of some of the companies that I observed, they were the most difficult, also the ones where there was a major misunderstanding. So this is the canvas. We will cover the shared functionality with an example. We will cover the complementers with another example, and we will touch base briefly on the firm's role and on the misunderstanding that you need to be an orchestrator all the times. In the resources that Hans and the Innov8rs has been distributing, there is an article we published as a part of an Ecosystem Inc. book, where all the steps of the canvas are explained, so you can actually go and download the article for the sections that I will be unable to cover. So share functionality. So we are in which industry are we? We are in the agrochemicals industry. So it's a chemical company, sanitized without mentioning any name, and the customer is the farmer. So how do you define the shared functionality if you are designing a building an ecosystem? And you start to think about, okay, I'm selling pesticides, I'm selling chemical products fundamentally for the farmer. So what is my job to be done? And the question is not a trivial one, because if you go for a job to be done, which is the shared functionality, which is too narrow, you go back to your product strategy. So if you define, for example, a job to be done or functionality like the one on the left, agrochem, is the following. Agrochem share functionality is farmers want to protect their crops from insects, diseases, and fungi. So you are defining a functionality which is fundamentally taking you back to a product strategy. So you must be really holistic in defining a shared functionality for an ecosystem. If you see the example on the right, is something which is much wider. Because you think about the farmer, and you think about the farmer around all the end-to-end cycle, and they want to maximize profit. They want to maximize the crop yield while protecting from risk. If you are a farmer, you have a lot of risk. You have a climate, you have, for some reasons, some of the seeds you're using, they are not performing as well as expected, or maybe some of the insecticides, or there is a fungi coming, or a disease coming there. So there are so many risks. So the farmers, they really want to maximize profit. At the same time, they do know that there is a risk in their business, because if you lose a crop, you are losing fundamentally a full year or maybe half a year, and they want protection from their risk. How did we get to this shared functionality? Here on the right, we got to the shared functionality. That's the process part. Mapping the end-to-end farmer experience cycle. So we are not doing an exercise here of mapping the touch point of the single product or service of the incumbent company. So we are taking the experience cycle end-to-end of a farmer from, for example, planning what type of a seed I'm going to plant, what type of input I need, up to selling in the market, up to the new capital investment in new machinery. So this is the end-to-end process. And the end-to-end process, and then you see the utility levers here. This is a tool from Professor Kim and Moborn at INSEAD, who are ECSI faculty partners. And then I'm mapping on this end-to-end for the different utility level of the farmer, which are the pain points and the risk. And then you can see there is a pain point on risk. I want to be protected. There is a pain point on how I'm going to sell my product at decent margin. And so it's all about profit maximization. It's all about the protection of risk. And this is the real big goal and pain point and need. And then from this, you can say, okay, so in this case, my ecosystem shared functionality is wider than just my narrow product one. And is in that case, the next question is, how do I move from here to complementars? So once your shared functionality is clear, which are the complementars that make sense? So obviously, you have products. Okay, you have the products may be your products, like in the case of this agricultural chemical company. So fertilizers or crop protection products and seeds. But then you start to say, okay, for maximizing yield, I really need to have in my ecosystem someone else, not us, but someone else offering weather forecasts, agronomic advisory services, soil detection, mapping tools, and a number of other agronomic services. And also maybe I need to have a number of complementars who are offering risk protection and insurance. And it can be typical climate insurance, or maybe we need to have someone who is able to innovate and to have an insurance and a protection which is guaranteeing a minimum yield. But the point is, try to understand that you move from understanding the holistic end-to-end cycle to a shared functionality which is broader than just your limited and narrow set of products, to a set of complementars. And then it's very easy, when you move from complementars to understand which are the sides of your ecosystem architecture, and then which are the potential partners. So that is very easy. But at least in our experience, we found those initial two steps were the most often misunderstood. Just a single message on the role. I think that there is one of my good friends and professors, we work together. They say there is an ego system instead of an ecosystem, because everybody wants to be an orchestrator. And obviously, if you're an orchestrator, you can capture a lot of more value, you can control it, and you can decide the curation, you can decide, you can use your data and network effects. Obviously, it's very risky because particularly for incumbents, there is a clash of a culture and the way you operate. But not necessarily you need to be an orchestrator all the time. So it's good to put on the table 3 options and to say, okay, I can be an orchestrator, I can be a partner, which, for example, in the agrochem case or in the DSB case before, a partner is the smartwatch provider. That is a partner, right? So you are offering a key element, a key complementer into the ecosystem of someone else is orchestrating, or it can be a contributor. A contributor is any app creator on an app store is a contributor. So I'm creating my own product and service, which is fitting on the ecosystem of someone else. All right, stop here for questions and answers. And Hans says I'll give this back to you, right?
Wonderful, thank you, Alessandro. I mean, I guess we could talk for hours, but I think you covered the basics nicely. So there were some questions coming in already. I had one question while you were talking, and of course, if you are on the line and you have a question, either type it into the chat or raise your hand through Zoom, and we can give you the mic as well if that's what you prefer. But my question, Alessandro, you talked about being an orchestrator, and you also mentioned like, hey, many have this idea that you always need to be an orchestrator. So my question when you were sharing that was like, hey, is that coming from this kind of fear of losing control? So as long as I'm the orchestrator, I manage this, and I can kind of like, how do you call it, like divide the cake. So can you tell us a bit more about that, the dynamics around being an orchestrator?
Yeah, I think particularly for incumbent companies, so there is a culture of control, because they are mostly coming from a vertical integrated way of doing business. So I control the value chain. Think about the automotive, right? The automakers, they control the value chain. They built a value chain based on control and command and control with the first tier, second tier. So that's a kind of a DNA which is in the culture of leaders of those companies. So they want control. They don't like to give it away. And the ecosystems, they are a threat for them. They understand they need to do something. And when they try to build their own ecosystem, they want to obviously play the role of the orchestrator. And sometimes they do disasters just because when you are an orchestrator, you need to be fair to everybody. But then you want to be an orchestrator because you have the ego, you want to be the orchestrator, then you go and you are not a fair orchestrator because your DNA is someone is taking the largest slice of the pie and I'm controlling it. So that's what most of my clients are large companies. That's what I'm trying to preach sometimes unsuccessfully. But if you really want to be an orchestrator, we need to radically change the culture and the way of operating. That's why it's so simple in practice. It's so difficult in implementing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Andy, I think your question was related to that. If you want to come on mic and ask your question. Andy? Otherwise, I can read it out for you if that's...
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, hi, Hans. Hi, Alex. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes,
we can. Right. So that question was just, out of my experiences, but I don't have any real life examples. I think the cohort and Alex, you especially, can throw some light, because I see there are a lot of domains where we have a lot of competitors. Competitors which are budding and which are coming up with new ideas, and especially, as you said, orchestrating is one great example. I understand the ego point, but the real problem happens when the ecosystem is there, and if there are any parallel ecosystems within a specific domain, like say I'm from oil and gas, and I'm trying to start a business with hydrogen economy, but I can see there is no ecosystem developed so far for hydrogen economy. Now, the question which comes to my mind is, when I develop an ecosystem which can also connect various other hydrogen contributors in terms of maybe producer, or in terms of a consumer, or in terms of various mid points where you can see retailers in case of say fuel stations. So how these competitors also can become complementary, so that it doesn't go out of reach for a specific company or a group of companies.
Okay, I'm trying. I'm not sure I understood the 100%, but no, I'm trying to address what I got it here. I think one important message is no, we should be all cautious that ecosystem is the solution for every single industry. Yeah? I think it's obviously with the digitization and platformization, this is true across many industries, but no, there are still some industries where the way you compete is through controlling the sources or vertically integrated. Minery is one. Oil extraction is another one. That is not going to change, obviously, right? And the second comment, the second comment is, no, there are some fantastic cases where you can continue to be into a product and service business, and on top of it, you can try to build an ecosystem which is adjacent. No, think about John Deere in the tractor business. No, they are still in the tractor business. No, but they are building also a digital ecosystem on top of it. Mostly not because of revenue, but because of all the information and flow and touch points and loyalty they can create with the customers on the product. So that's an important message to keep into account. I don't know. You mentioned hydrogen. I don't know the industry.
I think the other part of the question was: is there a way to convert a competitor to a complementer?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there is a way. This is a dilemma. No, if you think about the agrochem case I just presented, right?
Yeah.
And the company had this dilemma. What do we do with products? What do we do with the chemical products? Do we sell only our chemical products, or do we open the ecosystem to other chemical products? And eventually we sell also other chemical products. Do we control? So we decide who else is going to be into the ecosystem selling products which are potentially more complementers and not so competitive, or we keep it completely open. Those are strategy choices. Every time you don't open fully, what happens is that you create a friction. So you are limiting the value for your customer and user. On the other side, if you don't open fully, you are increasing your strategic control. There is no single solution, but no, this is one of the key strategic choices that needs to be done in the design. In the case of the agrochem, they decided to go for only their products and open to seeds of other corporations and companies.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Christoph, over to you. If you're
can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Morning, evening. Just quick question. So you mentioned that being an orchestrator and a fair orchestrator is key and at the same time very tricky. I just wonder if you have examples, concrete example of mechanism that could enable orchestrator to capture the value which is one of the tricky things, but in a fair and systematic way, so that they will not be seen, as you say, as a winner take all, but at the same time will not end up with only a kind of marketing platform, which is again enabling third-party interaction, which might be good in terms of, you know, brain power and position in the market, but not really generating value, and on the long run losing momentum, especially around the I would say executive in the organization behind these opportunities.
Christophe, I think it's easier for a startup, right? So the question you are posing is a difficult one for an incumbent. So because you are creating an ecosystem, and then you say to your customers and users, I'm going to be a fair or transparent orchestrators, right? But no, you are part of the industry. You have been selling products to them, and now you are trying to attract other complementers, eventually also some competitors on the supply side, and you say, I'm going to be fair. And obviously it's difficult because you start with a bad will, because you're a player. You have been a player, you have been trying to appropriate more value, and now you go to the same market and you say, okay, I want to be an orchestrator, I will be fair. So there is an image perception issue, and there is an image perception issue. Most of the incumbent companies, I'm talking about the John Deere, the Agrochem, the Xiaomi Steelcase. No, they try to go with a completely new independent brand, and usually they spin off in a separate independent business, the ecosystem, and then the platform later on. That's what I've seen successful in most of the cases, because when they continue to use some kind of a brand related to the incumbent, I don't think that there is even an issue of how to become fair, because the platform is not picking up. Yeah? Then it goes to your question. Okay, I'm eventually neutralizing the bad will because I use a new brand. I'm eventually separating it with another legal entity. Eventually also I'm opening up the capital to other shareholders. I'm doing all this. I'm staffing that company with the people from the company, at least the initial people, the management, or some of the key management positions. And this goes back to the fact that if you have been in an industry for 20, 30 years, you are a leader, and then suddenly you read everything on Harvard Business Review, but no, you become a leader of an ecosystem and a new business which is digital. Still, your culture, your DNA is a culture of a vertically integrated command and control. So how do you manage the impulse of trying to appropriate more value? And there are obviously analytically and rationally, there are ways to understand when you are appropriating more value on the table, because you can quantify the value to understand how to split. And then there is the behavior part that my suggestion is for those leaders who are coming from incumbent industries is always take someone from technology or someone with 20 years less than you and make it work with you, right? And try to counterbalance the instinct. But the instinct, I think, will be there, not all the times, but many, many times. And you need to find a way in the leadership creation team, in the governance body, to counterbalance it.
Christophe?
Yeah. I'm just, to be honest, I'm just a little bit. I mean, we always say it's like, easier with startup and so on. But startup, I mean, they have to, break the kind of chicken and egg issue of starting something new. while the incumbent, they already have part of this ecosystem. So you mean, sure, I mean, as you say, in terms of culture, in terms of brain and so on, there is a lot to be done. But at the same time, again, they have, I believe, at least part of the ecosystem, and they also have, I believe, at least assets that can be valorized throughout the ecosystem to, magnetize and somehow capture. But as you say, fair is difficult, but capture part of the value. So that's why my question, very curious about, and you pointed out, I mean, how it is difficult for the B2B and incubant industry organization to step into this kind of strategy. But I thank you for your response and your honesty about where are the hot buttons. Thank you.
Yeah, and Christophe, I think you are right. That's the most. I think the incumbents, they already have at least one side of the future ecosystem, yes, because they have customers and users, which is not trivial at all in terms of getting started. So if they can find a way to compensate their sometimes capabilities or culture, I think that is a huge asset that you can leverage.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Over to Alex. You had a question that fits nicely next.
I hope you meant me. I don't know, maybe there might be another Alex. It's one of these names that are quite common. So I've been listening very carefully, and thanks a lot for this amazing information. And I was wondering, as in the business model canvas, you usually try to design a business model and then you do experiments to see if the business model works. Do you follow the same approach with the ecosystem model canvas? And how would you run an experiment without actually having to build the ecosystem in advance?
Yeah, it's the same, Alex. It's exactly the same approach. So you develop some hypotheses, and then on those hypotheses you run some experiments. And the experiments are in this case, it's not just experiments on the product concept or the value proposition or whatever is the user interface. You need to run in addition to that. In addition to the user interface or whatever is the technology and digital you are developing, you need to run experiments on the complementors and the potential partners to see if you are attractive, and also to start experiment, going back to the point of Christophe, what is the fair value equation to share. So in the case of a smart body, I'm going to test with merchants if it's 20 or 25% or 30% taxes eventually is acceptable for them. And I'm going to test with them if this is of potential interest and which are the categories of merchants who are potentially more ready to jump on the ecosystem as a first tier. So those are all the experiments that you run. So but my simple answer, in addition to what you do for a product and service, you also need to create experiments for the other side, which is the supply side.
Okay, over to Tripura. You had a question as well, if you can come on mic.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my question is very broad. I just wanted to know, I'm fairly new to this, innovation process. So I would like to know, how do you actually arrive at this, defining the ecosystem metrics and KPIs? Is there any guidelines or any tips that you can provide?
It depends on your strategic business goal. So if you're in a business, maybe you have a challenging situation. Let me go back to the agrochem case that I presented before. What was the challenge there? The challenge was that products, they were reducing more and more in terms of profit margins. So there was a commoditization happening in the industry. And there was, even if this was a technology-driven company, it was always more and more a limited space to innovate on product performance. So they were completely in a situation. As a consequence, revenues, they were flat, and margins, they were going down, and they were more and more disintermediated fundamentally in the value chain by distributors. They were becoming more powerful, particularly in Brazil and in other countries. So that was the business issue. So when they said, okay, we need to create an ecosystem, an ecosystem was a way to avoid or reduce the commoditization, because if you are successful eventually becoming an orchestrator, again, you can escape the commoditization trap. And then by creating taxes, so a commission fundamentally on the digital apps related to agronomic services, plus the insurances they were selling through their ecosystem, they can create new revenue lines. And those revenue lines have gross margins which are nearly close to 100% because you are only an intermediary. And in that case, you can increase the aggregated, consolidated level of profit margins. So this is a case. But no, depending on where you are starting, those are the goals. There are other industries where you need to create an ecosystem just because it's defensive. Otherwise, you are disintermediated. And you don't like to be disintermediated, because if you are disintermediated totally, in that case, you are losing your strategic relevance in the value chain. So in that case, it's totally defensive. And so depending on the business, the industry, the context, the goal, you create KPIs and metrics which are different, and then you measure them over the course.
Okay. Thank you.
Shreyas, you had a question that I think is on everyone's mind when starting out exploring ecosystems. Shreyas.
Hi there. Hi, Alessandro. Nice presentation, and thanks for giving some clarity. I would also appreciate if you could unscramble this particular thought in our minds, that for ecosystem to succeed, does it necessarily need to have a digital platform, or it can succeed even without a digital platform? If so, if you could please share some examples, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say that conceptually, you can say you can have an ecosystem also without a digital platform, but the reason why they become so strategically important and popular in the last 10 years is because of technology and the digital platform, because the digital platform is allowing you fundamentally to create that matchmaking, that information flow, that reduce the frictions, orchestrate in a way that is reducing the cost of orchestration. So the digital is enabling the relevance, the strategic relevance of ecosystem. And we see the last 10, 20 years successful and new ecosystem that are all digital enabled, at least to my knowledge. But no, conceptually, you can have any single business which is a 2 size or 3 size. It can be like a mall. Now, if you think about a mall, traditional mall, you can think about it as like an ecosystem. I am a mall orchestrator. I have merchants, I have users and consumers and clients on the other side. No, that is you can stretch your imagination and think about that like an ecosystem. But no, that has been around for years and years. I think why is it relevant today? Because there is something digital which is enabling that.
Okay, that makes sense. A final question, over to Peter.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is related to the ecosystems. They're often quite local, driven by country-specific environments, regulations. So how to get quickly an overview of current ecosystems in a particular new market that you look to enter, where you want to basically become part of that ecosystem? So how to understand how an ecosystem works if you're entering a particular market, a country, for instance, where you're not present yet, and you look to develop such a market. Where does an ecosystem driving, let's say, this kind of market?
Okay. So how do you study and analyze it? So that's your question.
Yeah, and get a quick understanding of how the ecosystem works, basically.
Oh yeah, it's usually, the beauty of an ecosystem is they are transparent, so it's very easy to understand how they work. So you can end up with an ecosystem which is local or regional, or some of them are global. It depends on the nature of the business. But no, any of them, it can be easily analyzed, because usually they come with a digital platform. So you go there, you play with it, and you understand what they are offering, the functionalities, the user interfaces, who are the complementers, so that you can get that immediately, fundamentally on your laptop. I think in addition to that, if you are in a B2B particularly, it would be good to do some interviews with some of the partners and complementers on the supply side, and to understand their experience, and to understand also, usually this is something you don't find on the web, how they are rewarded, and what is their monetization model fundamentally. So those are additional information you can get only through talking to some of the people on the supply side, or the companies on the supply side. So that's the kind of analysis that you will do. Then you can extract the economics quite easily, because you can assume, obviously the orchestrator will not provide you those information, but you can assume what is the commission rate on the user side. You understand what is the monetization model on the supply side, even if there is a model for monetization for the orchestrator on the supply side. You can easily not calculate, but create an economic model for the orchestrator. And then to say, okay, if I need to be in that ecosystem, what that means for me. If they are, what is the money I'm leaving on the table? What is the strategic advantage for me to join? And then you can make your option analysis.
Okay, so you always start with looking what is the dominant digital platform.
Always. You start from there, because in ecosystems is usually the winner takes all. So you have a couple who are becoming the dominant, and the third, the fourth, the fifth, they are completely irrelevant. Okay. And they will usually become less relevant even in the future because of the network effects.
Lots to dive into further. Alessandro, anything else you want to add to the conversation?
No, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, and so there's more resources are on that book. I show you Ecosystem Inc., published by Thinkers 50. There is the article on the canvas. There is also an article, one of you made a question on experimentations. How do you do lean experimentations for ecosystem, which is the same conceptually, but slightly different practically of doing lean experimentation for products and services. One of you made a question on that, and we also have an article. We published an article on that in the same book.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Alessandro, for joining us and sharing all of your wisdom with us.
Thanks to you. Thanks to all of you.